And so back to the April 25th Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners workshop. And we are on to item 4C, renumbered item 4C, which is fiscal year 2023-2024 action plan for housing and economic development. Assistant Administrator
Thank
Dorrit
you.
Miller,
Thank
you
you,
are
Mayor.
recognized.
So I am Dorrit Miller, Assistant County Administrator. Good afternoon, and we are now on the topic of housing, which is your favorite topic. So just as an overview, and first let me just introduce who we have with us at the table. We have Carlos Serrano. Carlos is the Director of Strategic Planning and Operations in the Housing and Economic Development Department. And I refer to Carlos as the walking textbook when it comes to the technical knowledge, federal and state regulations. He is really super. And then we have Sherry Howard. She is the Deputy Director of the Department, Housing and Economic Development. And then we have Wendy Tippett. Wendy is from the Department of Community Services. She is a Director of Human Services. And I will let you know why Wendy is joining us in this conversation. So just as a general overview, the county receives funding for housing from the state as well as the federal government, okay? If you recall, several months ago, we brought to you the Commission on Affordable Housing report, okay, with some recommendations, and there is a local housing assistance program that is for the state under the SHIP program. So the state has certain regulations that we must adhere to. The federal government also has their own separate regulations, okay? So on an annual basis, Palm Beach County, that's for the federal now, through a formula, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which we refer to as HUD, allocates Community Development Block Grant, that is a CDBG funding, Home Investment Partnership Grant, which is HOME, and also Emergency Solutions Grant funds to jurisdictions who are referred to or eligible as entitlement communities. It's another criteria as to how you are eligible to become an entitlement jurisdiction. So Palm Beach County is one entitlement county, therefore we are eligible to receive these funds from HUD. And in Palm Beach County, there are 8 larger municipalities who are also entitlement cities. So larger municipalities like include Boca, Boynton Beach, Delray Beach, Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, Wellington, and West Palm Beach. They are entitlement cities, and they receive funding from HUD directly, not through us, okay? Now, under the federal regulations, entitlement cities, we are required to complete a 5-year consolidated plan. This was presented to the board. We already have one in place for fiscal years 2020 through 2024. And this is like the blueprint overarching, let us say, document for Palm Beach County for the strategies that you have adopted. Now we have this 5-year consolidated plan, and we're required now that each year we do a 1-year action plan. That 1-year action plan, it basically spells out the allocation that we'll be receiving in the next fiscal year, what strategies that we're going to employ, which must sort of parallel to what we have in the 5-year consolidated plan, and how those funds are allocated. So we have CDBG I mentioned, Home, and Emergency Solution Grants. The Emergency Solution Grants is really for homelessness and housing, and that is why we have Wendy. These funds, although they are funneled through the Department of Housing and Economic Development and make sure that we're in compliance with HUD regulations, the program is administered and the funds are also distributed and managed by Community Services. So we work in partnership with the Community Services. So what we have today is to present to you the annual action plan for fiscal year 2022-2023. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to, I think it's Carlos, who's going to get into the details.
Thank you, Dorit. That's a great overview. So today, Dorit presented the overview. We'll briefly talk about the public participation process, the priority needs that were established through the consolidated plan, that 5-year plan. Then we'll identify what resources are available for the upcoming federal fiscal year, talk about the proposed funding strategies that we offer for your consideration today, and then next steps in the process. So, as Dorit mentioned, HUD requires that as a condition of receiving these grant sources, every 5 years we prepare a consolidated plan. Essentially, that consolidated plan identifies needs and priorities in the areas of housing, economic, and community development, and kind of just sets general goals for how the county will use the funding resources that are available to it to serve those needs. Annually, the county's then required to prepare this annual action plan, which is what we're presenting to you today for consideration, that would identify specifically how the grant funds that are available for the upcoming federal fiscal year would be allocated to serve these needs. Specifically, those are the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, the Home Investments Partnership Program, or HOME program, and then the Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG. So the process by which the plan is developed involves public participation. We do a lot of outreach to stakeholders, both the general public, the agencies that we work with, others involved in the housing and services arena. We hold a series of public meetings, gather data, and then based on that stakeholder input, the priority needs that were identified in the 5-year consolidated plan and board direction, we put together proposed funding strategies for the dollars that are available for the upcoming year and bring them to you at this workshop. After this workshop, with your direction, we'll put together the draft plan, and there'll be some additional public review and opportunity for comment there, and then we'll come back to you for approval of that final plan on July 11th. The document's due to HUD no later than August 15th of each year. On this slide, you see a number of stakeholders that are that we communicate with through the citizen participation process. And this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sherry to talk about the resources.
Good afternoon, Sherry Howard, Deputy Director of Housing and Economic Development. So first, we're going to go through the eligible activities for each of these programs, CDBG, HOME, and ESG, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what our recommendations are for your consideration today to bring back to you in July. So first, we'll start with CDBG. The purpose of CDBG is to provide a suitable living environment and expand economic opportunities for low and moderate income persons. Those with incomes of no more than 80% of the area median income, and in 2022, this was $73,600 for a family of 4. CDBG allows for a broad range of eligible activities, including public facilities, infrastructure, social services, economic development activities, and housing rehabilitation. Notably, CDBG does not allow for the new construction of housing, so just keep that in mind. So for home investment partnerships, here's some of the eligible activities, and the sole purpose of HOME is affordable housing for low and moderate income households, again, with those of an income of no more than 80% AMI or $73,600 for a family of 4. Home funds can be used for new construction of housing, single family or multifamily, financial assistance to first-time home buyers, for acquisition and rehabilitation, and to provide a direct rental subsidy to low-income residents. HUD requires that no less than 15% of the home grant be provided to community housing development organizations, we call CHODOs as an acronym, which are a special kind of not-for-profit charter to develop housing within certain geographic areas. There have been approximately a half dozen of these small organizations operating countywide. We have, you may be familiar with the Community Land Trust, Habitat Housing Solutions, Riviera Beach CDC, New Urban CDC, Delray Beach CDC, et cetera. So now for ESG, or the Emergency Solutions Grant. The ESG program specifically serves the homeless and those at risk of homelessness, as Dora pointed out, or very low incomes earning less than 30% AMI or $46,000 for a family of 4. ESG can be used for housing and services, including operations of emergency shelters, prevent eviction, and rapid rehousing to get families into an apartment with first, last, and security payments. The funds are also used for client management information systems, which is a database used by providers to track service utilization by the homeless and to avoid duplication. HED partners with the Department of Community Services to implement this program, and Wendy will talk a little bit more about that later. So for the 2023-24 resources, here you can see HUD's grant allocations to the county through the formula for the upcoming fiscal year. They're formula-based, and their amounts have remained fairly consistent over the last few years, with the congressional appropriations have also remained consistent, so they haven't really wavered very, very much in the last couple of years. So we're going to start first with CDBG recommendations. This shows the funding strategies for the CDBG grant allocation, totaling $6.4 million. And we're going to go into detail of each of these activities, beginning with the public services. So HUD limits the amount of public service activities to no more than 15% of the total grant. So for this upcoming year, this amounts to $970,000, and consistent with board direction last year, we propose using 75% of that amount, or $728,000, towards the operations of the county's homeless facilities, including the Lewis Center, the Reach Family Shelter, and Melissa's Place in Pahokee. The other 25%, or $242,000, was offered to non-for-profit social service organizations through an RFP, or competitive process. Earlier this year, we received 17 proposals, 13 were responsive to the RFP, and the RFP selection committee is recommending funding for 9 agencies, as shown on the next slide. So here are the organizations and the activities. And the activities shown here that are recommended for funding do everything. They include services for the elderly, the homeless, the impoverished, victims of domestic abuse, pregnant women, children of farm workers, youth aging out of foster care, and others. These activities, with your approval, will be included in the action plan that will come before you as explained on July 11th. So for the Economic Development Services, it's proposed that the Center for Enterprise Opportunity that we fund now, and the Center for Technology, Enterprise, and Development, which we call TED, receive funding in the upcoming year. For CEO, or Center for Enterprise Opportunity, $80,000 would be utilized for business financial counseling and other services for startup and for new businesses, micro-lending, and for credit builder loans. For the TED Center, it is recommended that $250,000 will be included to continue their micro-enterprise incubators and training services, technical assistance, including tech support, creating marketing plans, and other workshops, also for new businesses and for small businesses. Both entities, according to HUD regulations, are required to create jobs. Of at least 51% of the jobs have to be made available to low to moderate income persons at the time of hire, or 80% or below the area median income, as we stated, which is $73,600 for a family of 4. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Carlos to talk about the municipalities.
All right, thank you, Sherry. So there are a total of 31 municipalities within the county that have entered into interlocal agreements with the county to participate in these HUD-funded programs. However, we only allocate CDBG funding directly to those municipalities that had established a target area through that 5-year consolidated plan. Here you see a list of municipalities such as those that have the target areas and the proposed allocation for them for the upcoming year. Now, to determine the dollar amount available to each of these municipalities, we essentially replicate the same formula that HUD uses on a national basis to distribute funds between various states, counties, and entitlement communities. That formula that HUD uses and that we replicate down here uses census data, and it takes into account population, poverty rate, and housing overcrowding within those municipalities. So essentially, we run that formula, advise the municipality of the amount available to it for the upcoming year, and then the municipality is free to identify how they would like to use those dollars that are available to them. So in order to assist municipalities with target area capital improvements, a special larger allocation of CDBG funds rotates among all the municipalities on an annual basis. We call this the Special Area of Hope allocation. It was originally allocated and rotated solely amongst the Glades municipalities many years back, but was later expanded at the board's direction to rotate amongst all of those municipalities with CDBG target areas. For the upcoming year, the City of Green Acres is slated to receive $347,000. It will use these funds for the construction of public sanitary sewer improvements on Martin Avenue within the original section of the city. And then the following year, next in line for the funding would be the town of Lake Park. So, by the same formula that we distribute CDBG funds to these municipalities, there's also a share of the funding that's made available for projects serving the unincorporated area. We take that amount of funds, reach out to other county departments who are looking to undertake capital improvement projects, and then partner with them on these projects. So for the upcoming year, you see 2 projects listed there. One with the Water Utilities Department to undertake water main improvements within Belle Glade. Essentially, that would result in 23,000 linear feet of new potable water mains and water services. It's a $6 million project in total, and it is shovel-ready. With your approval today, they are ready to issue the invitation to bid. The second project being recommended is $860,000 for the Parks and Recreation Department for the 3rd phase of improvements at the Orange Bowl facility at Glades Pioneer Park. This would be the final phase of the improvements to that Orange Bowl facility and would entail construction of an entrance plaza, an 1,800 square foot group picnic pavilion, and a drop-off area. So moving along to the home program, we propose to allocate home funds to assist both rental and for-sale housing. This would include the HED administered homebuyer assistance that provides second mortgages to first-time homebuyers to help close the purchase funding gap. We also propose to continue our rental development program, which provides gap funding for the development of affordable multifamily housing, either through new construction or acquisition and rehabilitation. Just some kind of examples of what we've done recently with the rental development project. We provided these home funds, provided the local match for 9% housing credits for the Autumn Ridge project in Westgate, which is now breaking ground on 106 apartments for the elderly. Other examples, recently completed projects, Flagler Station, right here on Banyan, that you see. We provided home funding to that project, resulted in 94 apartment units, all for low-income persons, and the Heron Estates project in Riviera Beach, which resulted in 79 townhomes for families. And of course, as was mentioned earlier, there's a mandatory 15% set aside for those community housing development organizations, the CHODOs. So this is what the dollar amounts would look like between those activities. Rental development, 1 million. Homebuyer assistance, 871,000. Those CHOTO activities, 534, and then 10% for program administration. All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Wendy now to speak to the ESG program.
Good afternoon. How are you? The ESG grant for the upcoming year is $570,000. We're very fortunate in the Department of Community Services as the lead agency for the continuum of care in Palm Beach County for homeless service providers. The continuum's priorities for the Emergency Solutions Grant funding for this coming year are emergency shelter, both for really, it says single men, but I'll expound on that, and it also includes victims of domestic violence. And for rapid rehousing, targeting homeless families this year and also seniors. Those were our largest populations that we saw the increase in this year. We then offer those to local not-for-profits via an RFP, and the selection committee is actually scheduled to meet May 9th to make those recommendations, and then recommendations will be included in the action plan that's being brought back to the board in July.
So for next steps, after today's meeting, we'll prepare the action plan in accordance with the board's direction, publish a draft document, hold the public stakeholder meetings we spoke about earlier, and hold a public meeting offering the opportunity for additional input. Then on July 11th, we'll bring back the final action plan for your approval before submitting it to HUD. And with that, we can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Bring it back to the board for any questions, comments.
input.
Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you. On page 7, you first talked about the CDBG grants, and then we talked about how 31 communities, 31 municipalities are able to have the county as the entity that controls it, right? Because we have other municipalities that, can you hear me? There we go.
Yes, I'm here.
I'm like, oh, I'm on the mic.
You're not on, yes.
There are other municipalities that I think there's a threshold where then the municipality themselves can administer the program themselves. Can you tell me what that threshold is?
Sure. A municipality must have a population of at least 50,000 in order to go to HUD directly for these grant funds.
Okay, so that would be the difference between the 31 and 39, when you
Yes,
gave
that
us
would
that
be
number
7,
earlier?
right.
Okay, but of the 31 that you gave us, you said that only, how many were actually,
The 11, I think? Yes.
In total,
Or
11
11.
established CDBG target areas.
okay.
Uh,
Can you
C-
explain what a target area is?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. A CDBG target area is a limited geographic area within the municipality that is identified by the municipality during our preparation of the consolidated plan. It's an area that meets HUD low and moderate income criteria. That means that the census tracts that constitute that area, at least 51% of the residents of that area is at 80% AMI or below. So you saw the criteria for CDBG income eligibility, and home as well was 80% of area median income. So it's a geographic area in which at least half of the population meets that eligibility. And we also look for the municipality to identify these areas that exhibit some need for infrastructure or housing improvements as well.
And do you find that there's been gentrification and these areas have been changing?
There certainly has been change in some of the areas over the years.
And Limestone Creek is a perfect example of that.
I know, breaks my
I
heart.
know.
Some of the population was not happy that they kind of fell out of that census tract, but with all the improvements that were made, they absolutely did fall out of that required.
Is there a way to, because of 2 developments, the Limestone Creek has fallen out of that, is there a way to somehow remove those developments from, like,
Census tract.
I don't know how to ask the question, but it breaks my heart that people that have been there ages and ages, you know, and they're on a fixed income, just because now there's new grandiose development in the area, they're the unintended consequence.
Sure. And you're going to find that happening more frequently because of redevelopment taking place in all these older communities. It's sad, but that's the reality.
Is there a way to revisit the equation or make suggestions to how the equation is done?
Sure. So with CDBG eligibility, it's kind of done on a project-by-project basis. In the case of an infrastructure project or a capital improvement, you're looking at the service area of that activity. Typically, the standard that HUD uses is census tract or census block group data for the service area of those improvements. When you have a project, though, say with a very small limited service area that's located within a larger census tract, you are allowed to undertake an income survey, which entails the work of contacting all of the residents, the homeowners within that service area. If you believe that you're going to get a different result via that survey than you would with this larger tract that, say, encompasses the upper income development.
Well, I'm looking to you all to help me in the future to save some of our areas that, because of gentrification, are falling out of this, and maybe there's some way we can, as you said, look at the equation to help them. So,
Is it Congress? You could speak with our congressional delegation. Yeah. I don't know. We've tried. We've been to HUD, Dean and I, talking about the AMI and how that formula doesn't fit all of Palm Beach County.
right.
But you find that a lot of changes that can be made to the HUD regulations is actually, I think, is Congress. So we can start talking to our local congressional delegation. I mean, we have Congresswoman Frankel. She's very familiar with what's happening here in West Palm, so
Yeah.
we can reach out to her. And we're also requested and asked numerous times to perhaps convene a meeting here in Palm Beach County with the HUD secretary, and there is a standing invitation. So she can come and just get a tour of Palm Beach County to realize that it's not all billionaires and millionaires live here. So we're hoping that we'll be able to do so.
It's just hard when a developer comes into an area and they're able to buy a swath of land for an inexpensive price, and they're displacing people that really don't realize the impact of the sale of their house. So any education and contact with HUD, I'm happy to be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Woodward, and then Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mayor. Sort of piggybacking, I had similar questions. You already answered a few of them. But as far as the CDBG, you said there's 31 municipalities. Does the target area within the municipality dictates the percentage that we're talking about, right? It's not the whole municipality. Even because I have some very small municipalities in my district, and I'm just wondering how small of a target area can it be, or does it have to be?
We're really flexible with the size of the municipal target areas. For example, the town of Mangonia Park, as you know, is very small geographically. They have a very small target area. It's probably a few blocks by a few blocks. And then there's, say, the city of Lake Worth, which has a much larger target area.
Okay. And the AMI, just so I'm clear, is that the AMI for the whole of Palm Beach County, or can that be zeroed down a little bit more? Is that how that's?
That's a sore topic with Ms. Baker. She can take
That's for the entire Palm Beach County. We have, over the decades, been speaking with HUD because, you know, we go from the very, very rich to the very, very poor. And when they set our AMI, our housing is based on that. And so when what we call affordable based on the AMI is really not affordable. So we're working and have been working with HUD, but with the new secretary, Secretary Fudge, we did meet with her. We've had some conversations and brought that to her attention. It makes it very difficult for us. I mean, I think you're going to hear later when the Housing Leadership Council comes up, actually our teachers, our starting teachers have dropped out of the bottom of workforce housing, and then they're now in affordable housing. And we need housing for those individuals. We need housing for our staff. We need housing for one of our biggest industry, and that is the hospitality industry. So we're giving them data and pulling a lot of stuff together. Hopefully we can get them down here. We did have the Secretary of Fannie Mae, Gina Mae, down. She saw the county, so she knows what we're struggling with. So we're going to continue to be a pain until somebody, kind of listens to us, and hopefully we get some adjustments.
Okay. Thank you. And one more question. As far as the 5-year targeted plan, I know you're working to bring us back some information on that. If you could help provide some guidance to a relatively new commissioner on how to let municipalities know what they need to do to move forward, what plans, would maybe qualify in some of these areas. I would appreciate if you could sort of give me a little guidance on how I could communicate that with my municipalities.
Certainly.
So, thank you.
Love to.
Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for providing us the update regarding CDBG, home, and ESG. Do we get also an update regarding SHIP, or is that completely different?
Right. SHIP is state. This is strictly the federal. We'll be coming to you, I think, is it next month with SHIP, based on the Live Local Act. We received a higher allocation this year, or next coming year, so we'll be coming to you with that allocation. You have the date for that, Carlos?
I believe we're coming back on July 11th with the SHIP allocations for the state fiscal year that starts July 1st. There was a total of $12 million allocated to Palm Beach County from the SHIP program for this upcoming year.
Okay, thank you. And, just thank you for presenting the action plan to us, and I support 1 through 5 of the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will proceed with our community meetings. Thank you very much.
All right, I just, I had a couple questions.
Okay. So
On the CDBG public facilities funding, how flexible is that? I mean, you talk about some infrastructure, but could that then be used to offset the cost of developing new housing?
Not the construction of new housing.
Not
Oh, right, okay.
using it to offset the cost of the infrastructure so that they wouldn't have to pay for that?
It can't, CDBG, although it can't be used for new housing construction, meaning the actual buildings themselves, or say the on-site improvements, you could do infrastructure improvements in support or that are needed in order for a new housing development. For example, you need to run a water main down the street to serve what's going to be a new housing development. You could use the dollars for that, or other types of infrastructure that would serve new housing.
That's exactly what I wanted to find out. And then you talked a little bit about on the home funds, the second mortgages. What's the current interest rate on those second mortgages?
So the second mortgages is a silent second mortgage. Essentially, we're providing an amount of purchase assistance funding to that home buyer taking a second mortgage from them. It does not require repayment for the period of affordability in which they are required to occupy the home as their primary residence. If they occupy the home for that entire period of affordability, the mortgage is forgiven after that point. If they sell at some point during the period, then they have to repay the entire principal amount of that second mortgage.
And I don't know if this is allowed, has there ever been a discussion, though, that, I mean, if they sell to another, family that qualifies, I understand, but if they were to sell it at a market rate, has anybody ever looked into saying, well, now you've accrued interest on this because you've got the benefit of the public's money for these years, and now you're the one who's walking away with all this money, and having some interest get repaid back so that we could help another family?
The mortgages could be structured that way. That is permissible.
It is.
Yes.
I would be curious to learn more about that for the future. Okay, Commissioner Bernard, you recognize. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. You know, I'm not a fan of charging interest on the loan because I still believe that, you know, our goals are to provide economic mobility to some of our residents. And, you know, when you purchase that first home, that's how you're able to create the middle class. And just this, let's say the loan used to be a 10-year with a burn off. Now it's a 30-year with no burn off. And I don't believe that the county should create barriers to create economic mobility for the residents. So that's not something that I would support, because I think that if you stay in the home for 25 to 30 years, we need to create the middle class. And thank you.
All right. I think we're all set.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Oh, my favorite topic. This better be great. Traffic signal technology. Is it my business? You could do that. You could probably do it better. It's something I am passionate about. Really? Oh, absolutely. You've never driven with me.
No, that's why I'm here today.
You drive with me, you'll find out I'm very passionate. Ask my wife.
Okay.
She has to bear the brunt of me sitting at traffic lights going, what in God? What is going on here?
Have you seen their office though with all the computers and screens?
That's old school. Old school. We don't need screens. We need computers.
It's true.
Well,
Let's talk about North.
let's. You guys walked in. You want to just give us some? You want to just give us a presentation and leave?
I don't think we need a presentation.
Let's go to signal technology.
All right, Assistant County Administrator Rudder, you're recognized. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon.
Mayor, Commissioners, good afternoon. I'm actually going to ask Dave to introduce his staff and our DOT guest.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners, and Madam County Administrator. With me, besides myself, I'm Dave Ricks, the County Engineer, Director of Engineering Public Works. I have Dr. Moal Turk, Director of my Traffic Division. Also with him, next to him, is Jonathan Overton from District 4. He's the Traffic Operations Engineer. And then next to him, as part of most staff, is Rasima Wad, who's managed our Traffic Management Center. This is a follow-up that the board requested when I gave my annual 5-year update in December. The board asked for an update on signal technologies. There's been a lot of questions on that. And this is provide the board just an update on where we're at with partnership with District 4 DOT. How's this work? Okay. There you go. So overview, we'll talk about our current traffic signal system, other leading available systems, traffic adaptive signal systems, and key ongoing efforts. So just to provide everyone a broad overview, we have about 1,100 traffic signalized intersections. And of that 1,100, about 40% of those are actually District 4 DOT, Florida Department of Transportation, roadways and signals that we manage. And including the ones that the county owns, we also manage almost the rest of for the other municipalities, except for City of Boca Raton and Town of Palm Beach. And so basically 90% of all the signals you see within our geographic boundaries is part of our overall network. And so part of our existing system is Cubic, and is deployed actually in early 2000. And we've got about, nationally, they're being deployed about 60,000 signals nationwide. And about, in terms of agencies, about 40 signal agencies in Florida. So just give you a broad overview in terms of core functionality. You know, there's a central, server or database. They have real-time, second-by-second data alarms and algorithm. And then the key part is the communication piece, and we use fiber optics, over almost 500 miles of that. And then we also have closed-circuit TV to monitor the system. And then we also use video and radar and loop detection as part of the overall how everything's connected. As I said earlier, the system is over 20 years old, but it's updated on a regular basis, just like your computer technology. And right now, the last update is 2021. We expect another update, a full update, actually next year, 2024. Get more reporting, more dashboards, and then also it helps us better connectivity with our traffic controllers. Those are the boxes that you see next to the traffic signals in the field. To provide a better perspective in terms of looking at how our system compared to other systems in the county, you can see on the left-hand side of the chart the types of systems: Cubic, Q-Free, Intellite, Econolite, and Unix. And then you can see nationally in terms of where they're used at. Cubic that we have 60,000 nationally, so we have it. Broward County has it, and Hillsborough County. And then Orange County uses Q-Free Right, and you can see on the chart where Pinellas County and Miami-Dade County. But give you a bit of perspective, overall, there's about number of travel signal systems, about 300,000. So and we have 1,100 of that. So, the question is, well, how do you, if you need to upgrade it, can you kind of go down to the local Best Buy and buy one? It's a little more than that. It's the overall system, because of the technology and the integration of technology, is very proprietary. So you have the central system, which we have at Vista, and then you have the stuff in the field, which are the controller, the signal controller, and then you see the signals themselves and the cameras. And then look at the cost per intersection, about 10 to 20,000 per intersection. And if you're doing a full cost for our system itself, you're looking over $20 million. So now, how does it really work in terms of how do we look at the system and how do we basically make it work? There are three major aspects of doing that. You can do fixed time, where things are pretty locked in. There's no detection, and you just use it based on the timing of where you think the traffic. And then in the middle box, you got actuated detection using basically what you see, the cameras or the loops. And then you do some coordination depending upon the traffic, the volume of traffic. And then the more advanced is adaptive, and it requires extensive, measurement systems in terms of equipment, and better high-end algorithm. And so those are three key aspects in terms of how the system is managed today. So the adaptive system is really the high end, and this is just a simple chart to show you how it works. It can be actually work as a module on the existing system, or it could be standalone. And the key thing, it looks at the traffic, and then it modulates the system to adapt to the traffic. Now, it'll get to a point that if you get too much traffic, then it doesn't do anything compared to a regular system. But the adaptive system is probably the high end in terms of how the system could be operated. So, like I said earlier, for adaptive control systems, you can do a module where it's part of the existing proprietary system, or it could be a standalone, you plug and play. We recently, since I've been here, actually, we deployed several through working with the Florida Department of Transportation, Okeechobee Boulevard, North Lake, PJ Boulevard, and Glaze Road. And once they got installed, and what we found out, looking at the maintenance and some of the reliability, we had a lot of problems. And actually, it caused more problems than it was solving. And so we have actually disestablished all those systems, and we're looking for the next generation to do that. Looking at some of our partner agencies, Broward County, they're in a major upgrade. They're doing a $30 million upgrade under putting fiber optics. We've got a lot of fiber optics in our system already. And they're installing some adaptive systems, and they're also doing video detection system. In Miami-Dade, they're doing a full replacement of the system. Their system is older than ours in terms of the technology, $150 million. And you can see there in terms of the components, a major, major complete upgrade of that system. So what are we doing now currently? We use an arterial management program. I'll go into that in a little more detail. we actually have we call it a traffic management center, which is at our Vista building, which is our central brain, and we're working with the Department of Transportation, District 4, to upgrade that. And then we're working with the TPA grant. We're doing a transit signal priority for our, Palm Trans, and that's going to be linked in with our emergency signal preemption for our fire department. So one system will handle both of those. Right now, we're in the RFP stage for that system, and then once that transit signal priority system gets installed, then once that gets installed and ready to go, then we'll execute the emergency signal position for the fire department. We're doing some vehicle detection reliability testing on some of our areas. And then I'll talk later that we're doing a test project working with the Florida Department of Transportation for new technologies. And then right now, 2 years ago, we started the flashing yellow as a test area. Now we've fully implemented in any new areas, and we will be sending to the board requests for getting grants to employ that other areas within the county. And so the arterial management program, this is basically looking at the data. We actually have 5 contract personnel in our traffic management center that basically look at the system and manage it on a real-time basis. And then we have system reports in terms of how reliable it is and make adjustments as needed. So it's an ongoing proactive performance of our system. And so part of the key components of a reliable system is the vehicle detection. You can see the cameras if you drive around other places. Also, you got the old tried and true method in terms of the loop method. But also, we're using camera technology. And the key part of that is to see how reliable it is. The loop system is very reliable, but it's very maintenance intensive to keep it up riding. We love to use cameras from other ones, but the key part of that is in terms of how reliable that equipment is, and so you don't have to replace it on a recurring basis. And so right now, working with the DOT, they've got a test project that they're going to start actually this summer, and using one of our corridors that is the Beeline Highway. And we're going to use that as a test project, look at some ongoing new technologies and get some data in terms of what is more reliable, and then potentially, based upon that, then we'll make some recommendations in terms of where we should make some major investments. And so that Beeline project is right now, phase 1 is FY24. We'll look at the adaptive control system, how we do pedestrian detection, which is key. Also, bicycle detection, and advanced signal controllers. And then later on, then we'll look at connected vehicles, which is the next generation in terms of technology.
I think they did this.
Go back a second.
Okay, is it?
No, sorry. To the
Okay,
previous
okay.
slide, the one with, okay, right there. Stop, go back. Next slide. There was phase, because it looks a little different on our presentation. It looks like Greek formula, so.
Yes, when we did the PDF version, I found out late this morning that the PDF version didn't come out very well. So we'll send you the just that slide, really. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I move on? Or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Now, we got some videos, and I'll have Dr. Moe here talk about the videos.
Yeah, if you could activate the video, please. Play it. No, the
Previous
same
slide.
slide. No, previous slide. Yeah. And scroll down a little bit on the slide, then you'll get that bar.
You scroll down, get the bar.
Yeah, here. So this video that we are going to be seeing is about an application developed by a company named Applied Information. It utilizes connected vehicle concept to communicate to drivers live information about signal operation, such as countdown to green and red light warning. I think I'll leave you just watching it, and it's all self-explanatory. And this goes through a smartphone, so you don't have to have specialized onboard. Yeah. That should be the red light warning.
This is gonna
we should be staying on the same slide.
Next one?
Yeah, no, this, we were not done yet.
Go to the next one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, one more thing about this video, it tells you that it can, that application can play in the background. So if you are using the navigation system, and so the other warning system plays in the background, and when needed, it comes up with the voice only without the display. We can go to the next video if you like now. The next slide. Next slide.
Clicker, try the next slide. I think it's loading. Is it?
Yeah, well.
Blue screen of death.
Yeah, let's go to the last slide. That would be just before the questions slide.
We'll talk to it anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. That was going to be about a research project by University of Florida in cooperation with.
There you go.
Yeah.
College of Engineering, UF Transportation Institute, and the city's Department of Mobility will apply advanced video processing and artificial intelligence to produce predictive risk models not yet seen in the United States by focusing on near misses at intersections.
We can calculate near misses, which will help us rank order the safety of even intersections which do not have a history of crashes. So it helps us to understand the safety problem a little bit more holistically, and the agencies can use this information to prioritize where they need to invest in terms of improvements. The city will provide a lot of access to their infrastructure, so we will have videos installed at the intersections. We will also have any other traffic metrics that they are collecting available to us.
Using that information, we are able to collect things like were there any near misses on that intersection? Are pedestrians jaywalking on that intersection?
The research will employ innovative technologies such as video cameras using edge computing to provide real-time data recording and processing.
So our end goal is that we will be able to put those kind of processors at the intersection itself, collect the video, process it right there, only send that information to a central computer like a cloud, and then be able to process it there.
To ensure privacy, only the data collected will be processed and saved.
Individuals are not identified. We are only focusing on the trajectories which are relevant to understanding the safety of the intersections.
Vision Zero is a national initiative aimed at reducing the number of accidents and fatalities to hopefully zero. In 2018, over 40,000 people in the U.S. lost their lives due to traffic accidents, and the city of Gainesville recorded over 1,800 accidents at intersections. The city is optimistic this research will allow it to meet its Vision Zero goal of reducing traffic injuries and deaths in half by 2025.
One of the 4 planks of Vision Zero is the use of technology and helping technology-informed design. And so through this National Science Foundation grant, we're able to deploy and use technology, which will then help us understand the data better, which will help us design better systems, and ultimately keep people safer and bring deaths and serious injuries down to zero.
One of the goals of this project is to create solutions that can be replicated and low cost in order to help communities across the country address dangerous intersections and improve traffic patterns.
So before I turn to the question, one additional coordination we're also doing, I think almost 6 months ago, we met down at Florida Atlantic University with the Vice Mayor, with DOT, and we found out that FAU is doing a lot of research on transportation technologies. And so we've started a little partnership with FAU in terms of what they're doing. As they're doing projects, we will be plugged in because they're using our infrastructure. And so, so the bottom line, there's a lot of ongoing initiatives, and we're trying to use the best and latest technology. The key thing is that before we make an investment, make sure it's the best thing for the community on that, and working with our partners here with the Department of Transportation, because 40% of our signals that we manage, our infrastructure, is part of their system that we do for them at a reimbursement cost. So, questions?
Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, and thanks, Mo and David, for all the work you've done with, in my district, for meeting with constituents about traffic and road construction. We heard earlier this morning about public transportation. This really ties in with it. Why is it that we don't have these, why is it emerging technologies? Why don't we have the technology today in this county, computers that will indicate when there's a traffic accident about to occur or when there's a collision about to occur? What are we missing?
Yeah, actually now we don't really need to invest in something like that when we can find it provided to us freely. At the TMC, we have our folks watch the condition of traffic on the major corridors on the Google map, and also utilize some of the equipment that we have installed in cooperation with FDOT that capture the signal from cell phones and give us indication on when there is a breakdown on any of those arterials. Our folks, and that's what the essence of the AMP program, the Arterial Management Program, that is funded totally by FDOT. Those folks are housed in our TMC, and I think most of you have been to our facility and you saw that. Those folks sit down there and watch on the big wall, watch the county map, and when they see red color for any of the links of the routes, they zoom in, they activate and utilize the CCTV cameras that we had located strategically along the major corridors to zoom in and verify what's happening there. And based on the information that they can see, they communicate with the traffic signals at that location and the adjacent locations to help flush traffic that is backing up due to that incident. So we have kind of live management of traffic signal system on the major corridors that we are monitoring. And we have, I don't know, 20 corridors that we are monitoring countywide, including major corridors like Okeechobee Boulevard, Southern Boulevard, Military Trail, Congress Avenue, and et cetera, et cetera.
I know when there was a mishap on Clinton Moore Road with Lyons Road and the intersection light was not working, I contacted your office, and it was like calling Comcast. You know, you push a button, I guess, and the light came back on. So we're able to have that connectivity with our intersection lights. But are we dependent on FDOT? Is that what you're saying, on getting better technology? I mean,
No,
we had
we
traffic cameras about 5-6 years ago. They're dismantled now, but I don't see what's the holdup on getting this technology.
We have, as we presented now today, the technology that we have that runs the core system. In the presentation, David alluded into the core system that is the central signal system that does all the work that you can see and feel. And there is another feature added to that, which is something like adaptive traffic control. And there are some experiences that we had with them, and David listed 4 corridors where we had them deployed between 2015 and 2020, and we ended up, pulling the plug on them due to lack of reliability and maintenance nightmares that we had with that system. But we are still open to this, and we are working with some of the newer vendors that are presenting new technology or which works on the same concept, but they are promising that they are more reliable. So we are in talks with them, and they are going to be deploying some of the intersections within the county for us to test them out, make sure that they work, and we will not be repeating the same issue like before. Now, about the current operation of our signal system, we had about 80% of all of our signals are online, meaning that we communicate with them live. So our folks in the TMC can dial in and look at what's happening there, uploading data and download data and make changes from the office. We also get through the central signal system live updates on the condition of all of these signals. The our vendor, which is Quebec, is the vendor of our signal system, are now working on upgrades to the software that will make this task a little easier and more user-friendly, so that our staff can see any malfunction or breakdown that happens in any of those signals right away, not waiting on people to call in those malfunctions. So we fare out on the top when it comes to the signal technology that is being used, and that's why we put in one of the slides a table that shows who does what, and we included the top 5 counties in the state, so that you can kind of compare, because we don't want to compare ourselves with, you know, a lower league, etc. So the top 5, and the system that we are using is utilized by 3 out of those 5. The other 3 systems, there are 4 major systems that are being used nationwide for traffic signal technology, and our system is utilized by 3 out of the top 5, including Broward County, and also we are looking for some upgrades for the signal system from our vendor. The only thing that I have issue with our vendor of the traffic signal system is a feature that is needed, or our ability to allow access to the signal data, timing data, to third parties, so that they can provide services and applications like the one that we presented that is based on connected vehicle. Unfortunately, Quebec tries to take advantage of us being handicapped and captive to their policies. They wanted us to sign an agreement with them to give them custody of our signal timing data and give them the rights to sell it to third parties in order to allow third parties to pull the data from our controllers so that they could run applications like this one. Unfortunately, and people called me about this driving in Broward County, they noticed that they can't do this. They already have it on some models, like I think Audi has it now and others, but we don't. Reason is that unfortunately, Broward County were willing to sign off their custody of the data and allow a third party, a company basically, to take the data, the public data, and go around and sell it to the third parties. So we made our voice heard to them. They came and met with us not long ago when they came to brief us on the updates that they are working on, and we told them that this is a taboo, this is something that we'll not work with, and we demand that you allow access and provide this data to third parties free of cost to anybody without you having any control over it. They promised that they will look into that. If they continue on this path, we would be recommending or that we look into changing the entire system, because at least at the staff level, we feel that this is something that we would not compromise on.
Thank you.
Hi, Fab. Now, it's been a while, so I will have to ask, was it Commissioner Woodward or Baxter who was going next?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have quite a few questions, but I'm going to go backwards because of what you were just talking about with the Quebec not allowing access. The other companies, UC Broward does allow this access. Have we shopped this out at all, or is this what you're talking about would need to do if Quebec doesn't allow?
No,
third party?
we are working with Quebec for them to change their policies and allow access without the strings that they attached and without imposing their terms that they tried to impose on us.
Okay, because I know you kept pointing to me because I liked that video where it was counting down the traffic light. I feel like I spend a lot of time sitting at traffic lights. I'd like to know how long.
Yeah.
So my question, as far as you talked about, if we were to move forward with a different company, we need to be prepared for future changes. So how has the company we're working with right now, how do they work with like updates to the system? Are we able to do that, or are we looking at new hardware? What would be required right now for us to do updates?
It's a software update that they are working on, and once they are ready with it, they will just download it and will just be able to use it. So there's nothing that we need to do. But if we were to change the entire system and go with a different vendor because of the issue of the connected vehicle data that they are trying to control, then that will be a different scenario. Then you will need to invest also a lot of money. As we said in the presentation, we are talking about $10 to $22 million eventually, and a lot of work too, because unfortunately with the traffic signal systems, they are all do not have open architecture. They are mostly proprietary, and they sell you a system that has other affiliated devices that work with them, and they are all proprietary. So you cannot just change the central system and keep everything else the same. You'll have to throw everything in the trash and acquire all the components from the other vendors.
And that's the $10,000 to $20,000 per intersection that you're talking about to
Correct,
do that?
yeah.
Okay.
And we have 1,100 signalized intersections.
So what we have right now, are they considered adaptive signals?
No, it's what we have now is not adaptive. And we did install adaptive signal system provided by a different vendor named Rhythm, and their system is called InSync. And we installed it on 4 corridors: Okeechobee, North Lake, PGA, and Glades Road, for a span of 6 years. We pulled the plug on it back in 2020. They were not reliable, and they had a lot of maintenance issues.
So as far as what we have now, you said it's just a software update. If the technology improves, could these signals get a software update to become adaptive, or would that be new equipment that would be required?
No, all the major systems have also an adaptive module that you can pay for it and they will add it. And or we have a choice of buying an outside vendor that will have its own system that can be installed on top of the core system. And that's what was Rhythm or InSync that we installed. It was not, it was a third-party provided system. So we are not, at this point, there is no adaptive system that shows significant improvement that would make us want to deploy it. But we are working with some of the newer vendors that are promising much better performance to see if they prove and show that they are truly providing what they're promising. So if that happens, of course, we will be open to buying those systems and adding them on.
And that would require new equipment or just an update?
No, those third party, it will be, they have their own detection equipment, and they have a small controller box that goes in the cabinet that sits between the detection and the signal controller that runs the intersection. Okay. So it's a can add on part of the system.
And do you have any idea of pricing, what that would cost per intersection?
One of the vendors that we are talking to, they said about $28,000 to $30,000 per intersection. Okay. Per intersection. So if you are talking about 200 signals, so what we are talking about $6 million. Yeah. These things are not cheap. I don't know if Rasim, you want to add anything to that?
No, it's just a lot of vendors are coming up with adaptive systems, and the range is typically anywhere between 30,000 to 80,000, depending on the system that you get. But ultimately, there are, as Mo noted, the distributed systems that add a bunch of hardware or a modular system that integrates with your software centrally.
Is there anywhere right now that we know of that's successfully using this anywhere in the country? Or
anywhere in the country that they're using those systems?
The integrated software that he's referring to, is there anywhere that's doing this now successfully, or?
Yes.
Could you tell me where?
There are several, by the way, several counties in Florida that experimented with the same system that we experimented with, and they had similar experiences like us. Now, Broward County, if you remember in the presentation, they have got some sales tax that they are spending on transportation and the signal system. So they are spending big chunk on installing fiber optic system cable network, which we did about 20 years ago. They are 20 years behind us. And also they are spending $15 million or so on adaptive. And what we heard that they were trying to install the same system that we had bad experience with. And since they started, we get the word from their staff that now they are having second thoughts. So, but again, we are working with other vendors. There is one of the companies that reached out to us, it's international. They are testing their system in Arizona. And I've been in talks with some consultants that went out there to visit and see how that system is working. And also, if DOT is working with them, they are trying to get their equipment approved by FDOT. You want to add anything to this, Jonathan?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Overton, District Traffic Operations Engineer for DOT. Palm Beach County's traffic control system is excellent. They don't have any, like you said, they are pulling back from the adaptive system test that they went through for 6 years. The infrastructure that they have in place now at the actuated signal system has and can have the capability of accommodated connected vehicle. So I want to make sure I want to make sure that that it's understood that you don't have to have an adaptive traffic signal system in order to have like I think Vice Mayor said, or someone did, how much more time to my green? Yes. You have to have the connected ability to communicate between the vehicle or the device in the vehicle and something outside the car that knows how much more time there is to green time. So adaptive signal system is different than the ability to connect vehicles to that type of system. And the infrastructure that the Palm Beach County has can accommodate that. I would also add, just so everyone knows, from the DOT standpoint, my major objectives is to really try and expand the network in which we're able to actively manage the arterial system. That's the roads that have traffic signals. To be able to watch the red line, like on Google Maps, and say, what is going on here? The yellow line, it wasn't that color 5 minutes ago or yesterday, So those kind of notifications, and then being able to use a camera to then turn and look to see where the problem might be is really where I think we really want to go, for managing traffic, being able to actively manage traffic. So a small portion of the network currently is equipped with cameras, ITS devices to be able to do that. We want to expand that, extend those pieces of road that have that kind of equipment so that you have the eyes, and ears to be able to make those changes on the fly, if you will, and just see what's going on.
Cool. Yes, thank you. That very much answers my question. I wanted to know, I know what the system is allowed to do right now, but what is it actually capable of? And without us having to do all new equipment, if it's a software issue and we just need to get them to come to an agreement to allow us to use it in these ways, then that would save us a significant amount of money and opened up the ability to do, we live in a smart technology world. It'd be nice if we could access it in this way. And that red line, it got me here 20 minutes early because Google Maps told me to get off the interstate for about 4 miles and I got here. So if we could do that with our traffic lights and we just need to get them to come to an agreement, I would very much support that. So thank you.
Actually, about more than 4 years ago, we signed an agreement and the board approved that agreement with one of the vendors that wanted to take that data, the signal timing data from our controllers and deploy it. And they were, I think, working for cars like Audi and some other brands. And after we executed the agreement, they came down to hook their equipment to our server so that they could start getting that data. And that's when Quebec stopped it. They told them that they need to sign an agreement with them and pay them to be allowed to hook up. And also they required us to sign another agreement to pay them some retainer fee also. And this own that data and allow them to take it and sell it to third party. And we said absolutely no, we'll not do that. So we are working with them on this. If they continue on that path, that could be a reason for us to recommend that we migrate from that system and go look for another system.
Commissioner, are you done? Commissioner Baxter, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, staff. Technology, I think I share with the mayor. I love technology. Never make a secret of that. And I think most of us at some point or another have been stuck behind somebody at a red light texting. So just to say, hey, green light approaching sounds great, right? So that you don't miss the green light, and then, you know, it's a ripple effect. So whether people are supposed to text or not is another story. They're probably not. I believe they passed that law. It's a ticketable offense, but people still do it. And here we are. So I love the idea of getting to an adaptive system, which I do recognize is separate, if I'm understanding that correctly, of being able to adjust based on traffic levels. Is that what I'm understanding the adaptive traffic signals are? And if we're upgrading to be adaptive and we can't come to an agreement with the Cubic, I'm just kind of summarizing, make sure I'm getting the full picture of this. With Cubic, then we are going to have to look elsewhere with another vendor potentially?
No, the issue with Cubic is only about connected vehicle feature, and connected vehicle is about those features that you can get, like, you know, countdown to green and when
Okay, so the Cubic
And-
part of this is
yeah,
about,
them allowing, you know, a third party to get the data, the signal timing data free.
gotcha.
That's basically what it is.
So it doesn't have to do with the adaptive part of it, just the
Correct,
signal
correct. Adaptive
to-
is a separate issue, yeah,
Okay.
separate issue.
So then where are we with the upgrade potentially to an adaptive light or signal? Is that possible?
Our experience, as we said earlier, with 4 corridors where we deployed adaptive between 2015 and 2020 was not good experience. Now, there are some new vendors that are promising better system that is more reliable, and we are in talks with them. First of all, they have not got approval even from FDOT for their equipment. They are working on that, and they will probably be getting that soon. But regardless, we are in talks with them to have them deploy their equipment on one, at least, of our intersections for us to test it out. And we are also waiting on the outcome of their larger scale deployment that is going on now in Tucson, Arizona, to see a report from an independent party showing that it's really doing what they are promising they are doing. And we have to be careful with those systems. The biggest problem with those systems is they are proprietary, and you buy them. That reminds me, if you remember about 15, 20 years ago when the PC computers became prevalent and people could have printers in their homes, etc., and they were giving you printers almost for free. But they cut you on the cartridges. You have to buy the cartridges from them. So this is very similar to that. So this is the problem that we have with this, and we had it with the system that we tried, the InSync. So we are looking at it holistically. And obviously, we would love it if we can find a system that's a plug and play. It makes our life much easier. And you know what? Not only us, everybody else will jump on it, and they will buy them at the end. So we are following up on that, but we want to vet it fully before we commit or recommend that we commit to something like that.
For the adaptive part of this
The
is what you're
adaptive part,
asking.
exactly.
So going back to the integrated part where your device can connect to the traffic signal, and if we do not come to that agreement with Cubic to release a software upgrade, then we have to go essentially look for another vendor?
Right. Yeah, that would be a somewhat costly migration. It will be, as we said earlier.
The per intersection and potentially an add-on to our existing hardware?
No, that would be a complete revamp, a replacement.
Okay. I know some of this sounds repetitive, but I just want to make sure I'm getting both of the different systems in their correct areas. So thank you.
All right, I'm waiting. Right. Go ahead, Commissioner Moreno.
All right, just a joke, and I'm going to age myself. I just leaned over to Greg and said there was a movie called Starman years ago, And the gentleman was asked, what's the difference between a green light, a red light, and a yellow light? The green light means go. The red light, no, I'm sorry. The red light means stop. The green light means go. And the yellow light means go very fast.
That was good. All right. Couple of questions. Rasim, you were starting to talk about other communities that have had successful adaptive implementations. Can you share those with us?
Yeah, I believe the answer was more so successful adaptive systems that are more of a modular base than more failure points that rely on hardware. I've had that. I've had experience in multiple systems in the past where there was just more flawless, given the experience that we had here with the distributed system or the hardware-based system. That was more of the answer that I was trying to give. Is that the modular has less failure points, basically. So.
Okay. Thank you. You keep going back to talking about the NSYNC system from 2015. So I had to do a little research. So this was called an iPhone 6 in 2015. So what was developed would have been developed probably over 2012, 2013, 2014. Technology is, that's just old. And so I can't subscribe to the belief that things haven't improved, that things aren't different, and that we could be doing a lot better for our residents and businesses. I mean, people tie up and spend literally thousands of hours every day at traffic lights in the county, and that's time they never get back. That's money that they're not making, and so when we talk about costs, there's a human cost that's way beyond what a traffic light costs. And then when you add in the safety side of it, I mean, that's incalculable as to when things happen and go wrong, and that could be avoided because of technology. So I will continue to, I guess, beat this drum. I think what you described from Cubic is a proprietary technology, 100%. That somebody would hold us hostage for our own data is, I don't know how we even got into a contract with a company that would do something like this. And and if we can't get it, is there a time frame to have this resolved with them? And if it isn't, when are we going to be able to make the change?
The new system, the software upgrade that they are
I'm talking
promising is part of this is going to be, they said, in a year or so.
Mo, I was talking about that issue of getting our data.
Yeah, in a year span, we will get back to you if we do not resolve that. Yeah, because they are working on a software update that will include abilities to also share the data, and that was part of the offer that they were coming to us with. And when we met,
so they're going to get us to pay more money to do an upgrade from them that will then give us our data. Right. But they won't give us our data today.
No, sorry. What we are talking about, them allowing third party to get that traffic signal timing data. And for them
do we have access to that traffic signal timing data?
We do have access
to
that.
So can't we give it to the third party?
No, we have to do it through their server. So we need to allow a third party to have the data.
Why can't we just give them a login like we give one of our other operators?
I think technologically we cannot. They have to go through them.
No, that is the best way to share that data centrally to their cloud, and then they can distribute it to these third-party vendors. However, there are a lot of advancements going on as we speak now. The medium of communication, vehicle to infrastructure, allows for direct communication between a traffic signal and a vehicle or a mobile device. So there are other ways, but that is ultimately the best way to do it.
Does this system, does it tell us when a traffic light is out?
Out as in non-functional or dark or?
That the light's out?
Yes, our current system does that.
Well, you got one out at Belvedere in 95. Right now it's been out for probably 2 weeks. So apparently it's not telling you too much.
I'm sorry, an indication, you mean like a signal indication maybe? Okay, no, it doesn't go to that level.
So it doesn't tell you if a traffic light is
Correct,
out.
I'm sorry, I meant if it's malfunctioning, yeah, we get all these key alarms, got it. yeah.
And then the other thing is, so for example, you have an accident on 95 and you want to reroute traffic off the freeway and, right, they're taking everybody off. Does our system then adjust and create a pathway for people to go and try and open up those routes for them?
Do you want to?
It does. That's where it gets back to what I was saying earlier. If we have, if that happens to happen on the arterial system that is managed, we can actively manage that area. We have eyes and ears that we can see the problems and adjust signals so that it's not going to fully accommodate the traffic that's coming off I-95, but it can help manage it better.
But you guys have technology in the interstate to tell you when something happens. Why doesn't that get communicated and then the adjustments happen? I mean, it's just bedlam around here when there's a traffic accident that, closes down a lane or two or potentially the entire freeway.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, and that's where I'm thinking we're relying on a human being to make those decisions and start doing the work, but apparently it's not catching up fast enough. Is that what's happening?
Well, Palm Beach County Traffic Engineering is a sister agency of ours. We're both in transportation together. We work with them very closely. That's why we have staff at the Traffic Management Center with them, talking and communicating with them, just as you said, that, hey, we got a problem on I-95. It's going to be down for a while. Look at the signal system. Look at the traffic signals on the detours, the probable detours, and make adjustments
Does
as
that
possible.
information get communicated to Waze and Google Maps and Apple, Apple Maps, so that their system will reroute the people to where we want them to go?
It does. It offers the route. It doesn't force one to go that way.
I understand.
Yeah. So
there is a communication that goes on, or are they
share the
choosing
data
Are
with-
they choosing the route, or are we suggesting a route to them?
we wouldn't suggest the route. So Google Maps, for example, will give you the fastest route if you've ever used that application, and you can choose what route you want to, but it just gives you the traffic conditions, so that one can.
Let me ask you guys another question. How come when there's no cross traffic, I'm sitting at a red light, and I just sit there, and there's no cross traffic? Why doesn't the light change?
Yeah, this happens, generally, it happens when the detection on the side street is failing for whatever reason. Whether it is loops that were in the pavement were cut and the signal is set on recall, we call it, because we don't have means of detection, and or if we have cameras that are malfunctioning, and it happens. And one time you called me about something on Okeechobee, and it turned out it was the camera that was left from the old system that was malfunctioning. So it fails, so it puts constant recall on that phase, even though there's no traffic.
It seems like there's a lot of intersections where this happens at. It's not like it's one-off. It seems like it's more common than not. That's why I'm wondering, if we have technology, can't the technology see there's no other cars coming, and let me allow this traffic that's is waiting now to move?
Not if there's a malfunction.
But no, I'm not talking about a malfunction.
Well, that's the majority of the problem that you described. Most of the time,
so
the line is
intersections
physically
are
cut.
having-
It's severed.
So in literally hundreds of intersections in the county don't have functioning loops?
It's also probably a function of the setup, the synchronization or coordination. There's always a major intersection or two within a segment that decide, hey, this is the preset cycle length, we call it, that should run so that we have the same type of window opening, green windows, if you will, to align the intersections. So sometimes, yeah, the smaller intersections, you notice the wait is a little longer. However, there's some major intersection dictating that.
And I know what I'm coming on from a small intersection onto a major one. I get.
Right, right.
But, you know, I was on Forest Hill. I've been on Forest Hill over the last few days, heading west. I couldn't tell you hide nor hair how those traffic lights function. You drive the speed limit, you get stuck at every red light. You don't drive the speed limit, you get stuck at every red light. It didn't make sense. And I just think that we can just do so much better. And I understand when we're in full gridlock, you know, look, nothing's going to help, right? You just have too many cars on the road trying to go to the exact same place at the exact same time. I get that. But we certainly can do much better for our community, both from their time perspective and a safety perspective, you know, and safety being paramount always. But I just think we can do better. And I'm encouraged that you guys are looking at things, but I don't think we're doing it fast enough. I think we can do better for our community. Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
We're going to put you on the FDOT, Mayor. I tell you, you know this stuff.
Trust me.
I'd like to speak to the FDOT right now. And I want to know this. What do we need to do to get the following? One, we need and maybe we already have it, let me know. Lights that are coordinated with EMS trucks and law enforcement so that if there is an emergency with either of those agencies, that their route is known and the lights will act accordingly.
I think I can take this one even.
Go ahead, Mo. Do we have it or we don't?
It's funding the project, but I am aware of it much more. We already have a plan to deploy that TSP, that Transit Signal Priority System, that's funded from the feds through FDOT. It will be deployed first on US 1, almost for the entire extent of it throughout the county. And that is next year. And
so 2024,
yeah,
the routes such as Glades, Atlantic, all these routes will have that capability by 2024.
Right.
Okay, good.
And for the transit. And subsequent year, we have a grant that was applied for by Palm Tran to deploy it also on Okeechobee Boulevard and on SR7 from Okeechobee down to Lake Worth. So, and we were holding off on the emergency vehicle preemption system until such time when we select the right system for the transit, because we do not want to deal with two different systems. We want to deal with one vendor, us in traffic. It's safer, cheaper, and more manageable. So once we select the vendor and the system for the transit, we will automatically have the emergency fire rescue go ahead and acquire through sole source purchasing, acquire the same system for the emergency vehicle systems. And fire is planning on deploying it almost county-wide. They will start obviously in pieces, but they are not restricted or restrained by funding like Palm Tran.
So in other words, the fire department doesn't have it yet.
They had old one that they
they don't have. They don't have the diesel.
Now they don't have.
They don't have it.
Have one, yes.
By 2024, I'm looking at the chief because we discussed this before. By 2024, will our firefighters have that capability? By 2024, next year.
They will start by 2024. They will be able to go ahead and award contracts and start working on it. These things don't happen overnight. It takes a year, probably two, to deploy a system.
You know, it's interesting because the gated communities have it so that when a fire truck is coming, they open automatically. I find it frustrating that the Florida Department of Transportation cannot provide us with a vendor that we can contract with so that our firefighters are safe as they go through these arteries. So I hope that we can get ahead of this, this technology and have it done. it's frustrating to think we don't have it. And the second thing, and again, this is FDOT, when there's a hurricane or if there's a national disaster, God forbid, will I-95 and the Turnpike be alerted so that traffic will be routed to the right areas or closed at certain arteries? How does that work, sir?
So are you talking about evacuation?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you mean? So we have plans in place, and just recently this past week I was involved on major sort of desktop drills to use the shoulders of I-95 in certain areas, as another lane to evacuate northbound. And the same thing on I-75 to Alligator Alley and some other major corridors in the road. I believe Turnpike also has it, but that's a different district that I'm not as knowledgeable about.
Okay. And the third thing is this. I remember being in the legislature, we had the Amber Alert, we had the Silver Alert. If somebody sort of escapes from a congregate living and they're driving down the highway, why can't we have on our phones the fact that I-95 today had 2 lanes closed, and we should have gone off. I should have been following Commissioner Woodward. Instead, I was stuck in traffic for a long period of time. Can we, and I'm looking at FDOT, can we have that capability, say within the next year? If I get an Amber Alert on my phone that something occurred in Homestead, Florida, why can't I get an alert on my phone that there's a traffic accident in this county on I-95, or there's going to be a detour or the Turnpike is blocked up?
There are apps available now that you can get those alerts when that happens. So the technology is there now.
So I could get this app so that I can be alerted to it?
Absolutely. I mean,
Could you tell it publicly so that we all know what it is?
Well, we also try to use, things like the dynamic message signs over I-95, and that's or the arterial dynamic message signs on the arterials as you approach 95, saying, southbound, 2 lanes are blocked. You decide. So we try and put that in a location where you can take an alternate route or choose to say it's probably not that bad. I'm going to give it a shot. So we try and disseminate the information to the traveler to make the choices. But so I think what you're describing is a lot of it is available now
on an app. Okay, good. And one last one is, as the mayor was talking about, aren't our lights already synchronized?
Yeah, on major corridors they are.
Okay.
And when you stop inorderly, it's because of an incident or a malfunction.
Okay, so if he's traveling on Forest Hills Boulevard, and if he does the speed limit, and we talk about this, Mr. Ricks, when we go out to the community, and you're doing the speed limit, you should be able to hit a green light all the way through, right, Mo?
No, we cannot always. It depends on the conditions on the road, how much demand and there's how much available capacity. Speed limit is free flow. You cannot always go on that, But there is, in some jurisdictions, they post what they call it progression speed. It's not speed limit, but progression speed. Meaning if you drive at that speed, you are more likely not to stop. But we don't have that either. We don't advertise progression speeds because we cannot, guarantee that you will not stop, because there are so many other factors that play into it. Again, incidents are the biggest ones. And what we have this AMP, we call it Arterial Management Program that we have, where they are monitoring so many corridors. Well, that's what they look for, incidents. If there are no incidents, the signal timing plans that we deploy should allow you to sail nonstop. But if that does not happen, it means there is an incident, or there is a malfunction in the system and the equipment. Rasim, do you have anything to add to this?
No, thank you.
Administrator Baker, do you want to be recognized?
No, what I will say is I will get with staff and Fire Rescue, Palm Tran, and get you a response back. I'm not aware that we're kind of mulling this, so I need to pull all parties together so we can give you one unified answer.
Mayor, if I may, one more thing I want to add about traffic.
If you want.
One thing is that many of the systems that we spend money on, like travel information systems, etc., are now becoming obsolete and of no use. I recommend to everybody, even my biggest boss, used to call me about disruption of traffic on Okeechobee. At one point I said, sorry, Virginia, but you know what? Even my wife, when she goes to her, activities that she goes to daily, she engages the navigation system because it can tell you live, and it will reroute you. This is the best way to do it.
Thank you.
Good advice, thank you. Commissioner Woodward, and then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. And you stole my thunder a little bit there. I was going to say I use it's Apple Maps every single day, even if I know where I'm going, and that's how I got off on Woolbright and then back on after I got on Hypoluxo, and then it took me off on Southern, so it completely rerouted me and saved me like 25 minutes this morning. So always use your map.
It's free.
Yeah, and it's free, so there's that. But I will say I appreciate my fellow commissioners' passion in this because I share it, and I know you guys have a very tough job because traffic is what it is, but there are numerous intersections here where I am sitting at a light, and I can see 3 different intersections sitting here with cars not moving, and the one car that has the one lane that has the green light, there's nobody. So it happens a lot. Is there any way for us to contact you to let you know when we see these types of malfunctions?
Well, absolutely. Actually, on our traffic division website, we have created several contact emails and phone numbers depending on the nature of traffic concern that you have. So it will go directly to the persons or the group of people that are handling that concern, whether it's signal timing, whether it's street lighting, it's a sign or pavement marking, or safety concern, depending on that. So there are several email addresses that are listed on our website.
Is that something that you'd be willing to share with us and we can push out on
Sure,
social
sure.
media and let our constituents know? Because I know that this is a real problem. I see it myself, and if I could send it directly to the people who can fix it and my constituents, all of our constituents, I know we would appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, sure.
email me.
Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to add on to what I was going to say based on the last comment. You said there's several different places, depending on the issue, that people can submit on your website. Is there any way we can unify that and have somebody else route it? They might not contact the proper department, I guess is what I'm getting at, somebody who's not an expert in traffic or the different areas or departments or where it needs to go. So I'm just concerned that the person might choose the wrong
Well, they could,
email, the wrong phone number. Is there just one, or are there several?
well, they'll send it to my office. I'll make sure it gets routed in the right place.
Okay. I don't think you want me putting your personal email on my newsletter. So.
We'll be okay.
We can work with ISS. If keywords are in there, then those keywords should be able to route to the appropriate entity. So we'll work with ISS on those particular things. David's busy.
Right. So thank you.
But we value the public input because we only have like about 30, 40 basically traffic technicians that go out in the field. And so a lot of times we find that what's going on, problems with our system, from the public. And so we value that input, that feedback, so that gives us to target our information.
Absolutely, I think
And the
that.
staff, they will forward the email or the concern to the appropriate entity if they are not the ones who are dealing with it.
And thank you for that, and thank you for the presentation. Everyone was absolutely amazing, and I believe we're going to wrap up. This is our last presentation, Mayor?
No,
No?
not one
Or we
more.
have one more? Okay. So I will add, thank you again.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor and then Commissioner Marino.
I just wanted you to know, Commissioner Woodward, that my constituents contact them through their website all the time. All the time. And I think it's been helpful, but I will say that even though the technology may not be 21st century, the people who work in traffic and engineering are the best, the best. And they're just wonderful. And they come out to my constituents a lot, and everybody's got an opinion on traffic. Everybody's got an opinion on traffic, or traffic lights, or intersections, or anything. So it makes for a very lively discussion, but they're always very responsive, and I thank you too. Appreciate it. You're very, very good.
Yep, and let me just share my thoughts as well. I mean, you guys have a mammoth job. There's no doubt about it. We just, and what you're hearing is us wanting it to be the absolute best that it can be for our community. But you do an amazing job, and when issues do come up, and they do, your responsiveness to our constituents is excellent. So appreciate that, and appreciate all the work of the folks that work in engineering. And so thank you, and we look forward to moving us forward faster together.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
Vice Mayor, members of the board, thank you.
All right, we have, I think, one more.
Yep, one more.
Okay, now that we can get to housing, we can handle that, and find out where we're going to live.
Maybe you can't get to it.
This is item 4E, Housing Plan for All, presentation by the Housing Leadership Council.
Mr. Mayor, if I have.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we do this presentation, what I'd like for us to do in the future, with this workshop, we've had 4 items where staff is presenting where there's no time certain. What I do hope in the future, if we're having an outside entity who's presenting, for us to actually coordinate a time certain, because the folks from the Housing Leadership Council, they've been here since 9 o'clock this morning, and it's almost 3 o'clock. So I just hope that we can figure out a way to give us time certain, to be fair to them, to know exactly what time they're going to present.
Fair enough.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dorothy Miller, Assistant County Administrator, and with me this afternoon I have Jack Ware and Skip Miller from the Housing Leadership Council. So I'm sure you are fully aware that over several months now, an extended period of time, the Housing Leadership Council has embarked on a special project to have dialogue all over Palm Beach County with municipalities and other interested parties to take a look at housing in Palm Beach County and to develop a plan, okay? So the Housing Leadership Council has adopted a housing plan for all, and the all is very, very significant, is that the plan does not really apply exclusively or only to unincorporated Palm Beach County. It's for Palm Beach County and all 39 municipalities, okay? So what you will see in the action items that will be presented, some of them are applicable to unincorporated Palm Beach County, us, okay? And for those action items, we have been working alongside with the Housing Leadership Council for many, many months, and it is far-reaching, okay? Action items relate to housing and economic development. Some are planning and zoning area. We also have action items that are relevant to the Office of Community Revitalization, FDO, Facilities Department, as well as Community Services. So each of these departments have already taken a look at it. Some recommendations are applicable. Some of them we already implemented some we're in the process of implementing. Some are policy decisions that rest with the board, and there are also others that are not applicable to Palm Beach County. So the HLC housing plan, when you all put it together, unincorporated Palm Beach County with developers, not-for-profit, and municipalities, it makes a whole, okay? So now, if you will allow me to hand it over to Jack and Skip, and they will make a presentation to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity this afternoon. We also have with us Michelle Jacobs, the President and CEO of the Economic Council, Suzanne Cabrera, who is the President and CEO of the Housing Leadership Council, unfortunately couldn't stick around this long, so I'm gonna fill in for her part of the presentation. And to start, I wanted to point out, yes, Jack and I are both involved with the Housing Leadership Council. Jack's currently the chair, I'm the vice chair. But the organization that developed this housing plan is actually an organization called the Housing Steering Committee. And the Housing Steering Committee was formed actually back in 2017, and the role of the Housing Steering Committee was initially to put on the Housing Summit that we had at the Convention Center. I know some of you were there. And the Housing Steering Committee consists of stakeholders, the Housing Leadership Council, and quite a few county staff members. So the county has been with us on this every step of the way. As Dorrit pointed out, we may not agree on every single item in the plan, but conceptually, they are with us, and we hope that you will be with us too by the end of this presentation. I want to give you a little bit of history. Oh, you've got the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is this how you move it forward? Is this how you move it forward? I'm not ready to move it forward, I just... That one.
Started. Here you go. Yeah, this one here.
Okay. That goes forward. Okay, thank you. So we started, like I said, with the steering committee that developed and put on the Housing Summit. After the Housing Summit, the steering committee stayed in existence and was given the task of developing a housing plan. And the reason for developing a housing plan is we felt like, we all knew there was a problem, but we also felt like we needed to independently quantify the problem and to come up with potential solutions, so that we could move forward. So the next thing that happened after we had the summit was the steering committee divided itself into 4 subcommittees, one for each part of the county. And each of those subcommittees came, I think that's back here. Yeah. And each of those subcommittees came back with recommendations. Each subcommittee had between 15 and 20 members. Some were citizens, some were professionals, some were county staff. And we took the recommendations and we consolidated them into 12 recommendations. A lot of those recommendations found their way into the housing plan. But the number one recommendation was that the county needed to have a dedicated funding source for affordable and workforce housing, and the preferred dedicated housing source was a general obligation bond issue. Yeah, I'm good. Okay, so the next step, before we could do the bond issue, again, we needed to quantify the problem. So the Housing Leadership Council engaged Florida International University to provide a housing needs assessment, which they did. The housing needs assessment was completed in February of 2021, and it showed what we all knew, that there's just tremendous shortage of affordable and workforce housing in Palm Beach County. I mean, to the extent that a huge percentage of our residents were paying more than 50% of their expendable income for housing. Not expendable income, total income. And the guideline is you should not be spending more than 30%. And we had probably over half of our residents were paying more than 30% of their income for housing. This is what the housing needs assessment looks like. Hopefully you've all seen a copy of it and had a chance to look at it. So we took the housing needs assessment, and from the housing needs assessment, we being the Housing Steering Committee, took on the task of developing a countywide housing plan that would address these shortages and come up with some recommended solutions. And as you can see from the PowerPoint, and I'm just going to read this part of it, this is pretty short. The plan is a blueprint for how to achieve a significant increase in the production of workforce and affordable housing. Our vision is sustainable access to financially feasible and diverse housing options available for the broad range of incomes represented in our workforce and community. Our goal is to produce, rehabilitate, and/or preserve 20,000 units of workforce and affordable housing by 2032. So the plan itself has 4 focus areas: funding and financing, planning and regulatory reform, neighborhood revitalization, and racial equity. And there's a 5th element that's what's the implementation element, how we implement the plan. And so what we did we identified these funding areas. We had a series of presentations over the course of over a year where we had experts come and talk to the steering committee, present to them different ideas about things that were being done in other parts of the country, what might work here, what might not work here. And based on those meetings, we started developing the plan with the specific recommendations. And we had almost 200 people participated in these sessions, either as members of the steering committee or as presenters or as interested citizens. And so we came up again with the 4 recommendations. The first area is funding and financing, and the primary recommendation, was that supposed to happen?
Wrong color.
Keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, going back, the number 1 recommendation was a dedicated local funding source, and the recommended dedicated local funding source was a general obligation bond issue. And this board, in their wisdom, decided to put a $200 million housing bond on the ballot in November of 2022. And that referendum was approved with somewhere over 55% of the voters, so I would, consider that a pretty substantial victory. And the $200 million, the plan is to roll that out in a series of bond tranches that can leverage other funding sources to produce new, affordable, and workforce housing over the next 10 years. The proceeds will be used to provide low interest rate subordinate loans to developers in exchange for those developers setting aside all or a significant portion of those units for affordable and workforce housing. This will increase the supply of units, and all units produced with bond funding will have affordability restrictions on them. It is projected that at least 50% of the bond proceeds will be used for the production of rental housing, and at least 25% will be used for home ownership, and how that split winds up being at the end of the day will be determined by funding demand. County staff is in the process of finalizing a bond proceeds allocation process that will be presented to the board for its consideration at a later date. So, in addition to, and the bond issue, the bond issue in and of itself is not going to generate 20,000 units of housing. The bond issue, how many units it generates will depend on the per unit subsidy that the board winds up approving for specific projects, what income categories those subsidies are provided to. So, for example, the per unit cost of providing a single unit of for sale housing to someone making 60% of AMI is going to be much greater than the cost of producing one rental unit to someone making 120% of AMI. And those are decisions that the board is going to have the opportunity to make as we move forward and see what kind of responses we get to the county's RFP. But there are a number of other financial tools that will either be combined with the bond issue or will be separate and apart from the bond issue that will increase the supply of affordable and workforce housing. Bond proceeds can be combined with bonds issued by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation and the Palm Beach County Housing Finance Authority using the 4% federal lower income housing tax credit. That would be for rental housing for persons and families making 60% of AMI or less. We are hoping that the county's various community redevelopment agencies will start devoting more of their TIF funding to affordable and workforce housing. The county currently has a workforce housing trust fund that is funded with the money that developers pay into the fund in lieu of providing workforce housing either on-site or off-site. We think the use of those funds can be expanded. We are, again, optimistic that the cities will make their own contributions to affordable and workforce housing. And we have the federal funding sources that were discussed earlier today. We have SHIP, we have HOME, we have NSP2. All of those are resources that can be used and applied to increase our housing supply. Other financial support, which could be independent or in conjunction with using county bond proceeds. Right now, the county has a program where they allow 50% of the interest earnings on impact fees in different parts of the county for different purposes to be used for affordable housing. We think that 50% could be increased to 100%. We also think that the county and cities can apply building permit waivers or deferrals that will assist. The state legislature, for good or for bad, has already really implemented or will force counties and cities to implement one of our recommendations, and that's real estate tax abatements and reduced real estate tax assessments for affordable and workforce housing. The Live Local bill that was just passed by the state legislature has some provisions. Some are mandatory, some are optional, but they all have the effect of providing tax relief, which again will reduce the cost of providing housing. And creating, it's not on the list here, but creating, one of our big problems, especially on the for sale side, is when a house goes up for sale, it gets snapped up by an investor. And the investor is able to do that because they're usually in the position of being able to put down all cash, and they're usually willing to offer more money than someone that needs to get financing. So one of our suggestions is to create a consortium of local lenders that would provide a funding source to compete with the investor, so that when a for sale property does go up for sale, a potential affordable or workforce home buyer can tap into that funding source. So just in summary, on the funding and financing part, with the dramatic increase in construction costs, we really need to put these measures in place as soon as possible. Again, I know that county staff is going to be presenting the bond allocation process to you shortly, and we would just urge you to consider the provisions of our plan. I think everyone's been provided with the plan. The funding and finance provisions are on pages, bear with me just a second, pages 10 and 11 of the plan itself. And I'm going to turn it over to Jack right now, who's going to discuss the other elements of our housing plan.
Thank you, Skip. So the goal is to be able to leverage these public dollars. Pardon me? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Okay. Better now? Okay. The goal is to most effectively leverage the private financing. This is going to be a private sector driven initiative in terms of the development of the housing. So the goal is to stretch these public dollars by leveraging them with the most amount of private debt and equity that the project can support while being economically feasible. So that means that you may see many mixed income projects in which there's a market component and a workforce housing component as well. So just wanted to caution you about that. So the planning and regulatory reforms can be summarized into 3 areas. And as Ms. Miller noted, the fact that certain items are in here doesn't mean that the county isn't doing them or they're not doing them adequately. This is sort of a best practices regimen for both the county and for municipalities. So the first one is more density in certain locations, specified locations. And so that includes things like zoning increases along major commercial corridors, use of planned unit developments, AD accessory dwelling units in single-family neighborhoods, infill duplexes and triplexes, expanded definitions of compatibility, and more density in transit-oriented developments. So that's all part of the mix there. The second is expanding the developable footprint. So this means changing the underlying land use on non-residential properties such as commercial properties, shopping centers, office buildings, to allow for a residential component. This will be key to redevelopment, and particularly in the more developed aspects, the eastern part of the county, so that there can be more mixed-use developments in which there's a residential component along with commercial components as well. There's an evaluation of potential surplus land, and the Live Local Act said not just the counties, but also the state needs to look at their potential surplus land, so that may open up some more opportunities for sites for workforce and affordable housing. And the last is increasing the speed of development approvals and permitting. And there's basically 3 aspects of it. There's the entitlement phase, which is both land use changes, where we make a specific recommendation, and then zoning and site plan approvals. There is the permitting process, which is the review of construction drawings and the granting of permits. And then there's actually post-construction commencement, the inspections and the inspection process as well. So these are all areas that we've suggested, made specific action item recommendations for. And some of these will be policy issues for you to consider in the future. One of them is purchase of TDRs for density bonuses in connection with the workforce housing program. So that will be a coming attraction. A third component of this is the neighborhood revitalization component. And so there's a couple aspects to this. The plan will seek to identify target neighborhoods for reinvestment. And this clearly works best when there is local support in the form of strong local government investment in the community and also neighborhood associations and neighborhood involvement. Ideally, the housing initiatives would be coordinated with infrastructure improvements, school reinvestment, and an emphasis on public safety. So one element of the housing strategy will be rehabilitation and repair of existing homes. The thing that I wanted to mention here is the bonds are for new production, so the rehabilitation will come from some of the other sources that Skip referenced and are already administered by the county. A second will be new housing production, vacant lots, infill development, redevelopment of commercial properties, in some cases abandoned commercial properties. And then as Skip referenced, one of the things that we want to do is to create a loan fund for cash investors. So 36% of the home sales in the county are to cash investors. So if someone goes through the county process, they qualify for a second mortgage, they qualify for a first mortgage loan, and they go to make an offer on the house is gone. So the implicit goal here is to try and raise the home ownership rate in historically disinvested neighborhoods by creating a loan pool that can move fast and can purchase the homes and then resell it to qualified first-time home buyers. And this has actually been done. It's based on a program that's already active in Cincinnati. And then there's a major philanthropic initiative to boost nonprofit development capacity. I can tell you that HLC has already been working with the Community Foundation on a philanthropic initiative that would both boost nonprofit capacity, subsidize or create funds for the loan pool that would be supplemented by lender funds, and then also to increase Housing Leadership Council staff capacity. The last category is racial equity. And Housing Leadership Council is doing a racial assessment, equity assessment right now with FIU. That's in the draft stage, should be released over the summer. And there's three areas that have come into focus in particular. One is identifying and addressing access to financing obstacles, and that's particularly for home ownership. The second is addressing inequities in property valuations in historically disinvested neighborhoods where comparable properties are not valued in the same way depending on where they're located. And then the third is providing legal support regarding titles issues. And there's a number of things that fall under this category. Making sure that residents qualify for homestead exemptions to which they're entitled, making sure that they have wills. This comes under the heading of heirs' rights. Often properties are lost when the principal resident dies and then the children can't agree on what to do with it and there's no clear direction. Title issues, lingering code enforcement issues. The Legal Aid Society is already working on a program in connection with this, so the goal would be to expand on their efforts and include more neighborhoods. As Skip mentioned, implementation is going to be a big part of this. You'll get this bond allocation framework either later in May or in June. And it's a framework under which multiple requests for proposals will be issued. Some will be for rental housing, for workforce housing. Some might be for rental housing, affordable housing involving Florida housing. Some may be for home ownership. So there will be multiple RFPs, and we're envisioning that the bonds will be issued over several years. So this will be an ongoing process, and it's one that can be refined as we learn more through the allocation process. Compliance will be a big part of this, and making sure it works correctly. There'll be a deed restriction, there'll be annual reports required of the property owners, and there'll be third-party compliance monitoring to make sure that the obligations are being fulfilled, not only by the owner under whom the property is initially developed, but if they sell the property, to make sure that the new owner continues to adhere to the restrictions there. There will be a heavy dose of education and coordination with the municipality to implement elements of the housing plan there. And finally, Housing Leadership Council is committed to play a role in the ongoing assessment of the program's effectiveness, and to provide both assistance and support on the administration of the program to the county's efforts. It's very important that we keep score here. How many units we produce, what the subsidy is per the units, what's working and what's not working. So implementation obviously is critical. In summary, the thing that I'd like to stress is the housing plan is not just an initiative of the county government and municipal governments. There's a very important private sector role here for developers and also lenders and equity investors to play. And it will be the basis, as I've mentioned, for a major philanthropic initiative as well. The housing plan is important as an overall roadmap. It's a basis for enacting specific policy initiatives contained within it. And it's also a clear statement by the county of commitment and purpose to address the housing issue. Today's presentation is informational. We'll ultimately be seeking approval of the Board of County Commissioners for the housing plan. While the municipalities have an important role to play in the implementation of the plan, the entity that we're going to for the approval of the plan is the County Board of Commissioners. We're not going to be going to 39 different municipalities and saying, please. We're going to get them to implement it when they can. We're going to push them very strongly to participate. There are some municipalities that are already fully on board that have come up with their own initiatives, and we'll see if we can leverage their efforts and get them to do more. But you're the group that we're going to be going to establish the roadmap for all of Palm Beach County. And the other thing I would note is, to the extent that there are areas in which the staff is not fully supportive of HLC or the steering committee's recommendations in the plan, those are areas we'll first try and work out any issues with staff that we can. And if there are policy issues that we need to elevate to the board, then you'll have the opportunity to weigh in on those and to do that as well. I would say that the members of the steering committee had the opportunity to review a wide variety of housing plans from cities, counties, and others. This is the most detailed and substantive one of all we've reviewed. This is concrete suggestions in terms of how we can make a meaningful difference and produce more units. Housing remains a critical issue not only for our residents, but also for the businesses that both seek employees to attract and to retain. We've had strong business support throughout the process. Michelle Jacobs at the Economic Council has been with us every step of the way, and the Economic Council has been strongly supportive of this effort. So Skip and I would be happy to take any questions. Suzanne will be happy to take questions when you contact her individually. And we also, all of us and Michelle would be happy to meet with you individually if you want to go into any aspects of the plan in more depth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Is there any questions or comments now? If not, we have some comment cards, and then we can bring it back.
Thank you. We have 4 comment cards. Jennifer Sellers, if you're still here, Jody McNeil, Jennifer Ray, and Michelle Jacobs.
Hi there, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Sellers. I am the Director of Community Engagement and Advocacy at the Lord's Place. Apologies for my dry voice at the moment. But I come before you as a homeless service provider, and we serve those that are 30% below AMI, which is really important. Right now, what I can tell you is what we're seeing, right? Right now, we are seeing an increase in our homeless population. We are also seeing an alarming increase in our senior community calling in for homeless assistance because they can no longer afford their rents and their housing. So I want to share some data with you to kind of punctuate the need. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, the GAP, their affordable housing gap analysis was just recently published in March 23, so just last month. Florida has more than 575,000 extremely low-income renter households. So those are below 30% AMI in the state of Florida. Only 23 affordable and available rental homes exist for every 100 extremely low-income renter household in Florida. And 83% of extremely low-income renter households experience severe cost burden, which means that they are spending more than half of their income on housing. And I think we heard that number at 50% from the presentation earlier, just in Palm Beach County. So I respectfully ask that each of you consider those who are extremely low income, extremely vulnerable in our community, those residents in Palm Beach County who are at or below 50% AMI, when working through this Palm Beach County housing plan. That would be wonderful. And I thank you for your time and the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Jody McNeil. I am a resident of Palm Beach Gardens and an employee of Adopt a Family of the Palm Beaches. As I'm sure many of you know, our agency provides housing and services for our low-income neighbors, families with minor children. And I'd like to add my voice to Jennifer's in both thanking you for the efforts to make sure that our vibrant community has homes for all who want to live here, all of the people who provide essential services, and to speak on behalf of those clients that call every day expressing that they can't find a place for their children to sleep. They can't afford to find a place for their children to sleep. And those would be our least fortunate neighbors whose incomes are at or below 50% of area median income. So that's what I would like to share with you, and that the need is great. It's overwhelming and alarming when our phones ring every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Ray, and I'm the Chief Program Officer with Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse, also known as AVDA, in Palm Beach County. I wanted to also, as Jennifer was just said, we want to make sure that there is support for those who are 50% below AMI and below. According to the National Network to End Domestic Violence, 99% of domestic violence victims experience financial abuse, meaning that they have not had access to the family finances, they've been prohibited from working, or have their credit destroyed by an abusive partner. Additionally, 63% of homeless women and children have experienced domestic and sexual violence. The lack of affordable housing prevents domestic violence victims and their children from living in safe and independent from their abusive partner. Since COVID, there has been an increase in the number of highly lethal, meaning the victims are more likely to be killed by their abuser. In these situations, victims that are facing more highly lethal situations in our county. That's increasing the need for emergency shelter in domestic violence centers. Without an affordable place to go, for survivors to move into post living in an emergency shelter, it then increases the risk of harm to the other victims that are trying to get into an emergency shelter. So access to affordable housing for those living below 50% AMI literally saves lives. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have any, oh, Michelle.
I'll be quick. Good afternoon, Michelle Jacobs, Economic Council of Palm Beach County, Mayor, Vice Mayor, County Commissioners, Administrator Baker. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes today to hear the process and the progress for the housing plan. I also want to again thank you for the work that you did and the support that you gave for the housing bond last year. As you know, the Economic Council formed the Housing Leadership Council back in 2005, and we currently still have 4 seats on that board, and we work very hard to continue to support the efforts of what we today face is a housing crisis. We also have had members that have served on all 4 of those steering committees, the geographic committees, and we were very involved in the Housing Summit. So we are here to support for the long haul, and I want you to know that. We're really very pleased that we had so many stakeholders with the public, private, nonprofit sector, civic community coming together for this very comprehensive countywide housing plan. And while, yes, it's really important that our municipalities adopt this and the action items that are within it, your support and your stamp of approval is crucial for us to be able to garner additional matching resources because you're our county leadership. So we definitely hope that down the road, once we've had the opportunity to answer any questions for you for the plan, that you will support it. I will also just share with you that county staff has been exceptional in giving us feedback, giving us support, and we are, I would say, 95% in complete alignment with what we think we can and cannot do. And what I think Jack said also is that a lot of the recommendations that are in here, you all already are doing, and you're leaders in that. So we want to thank you for that as well. We are here to continue to support not only the Housing for All plan, but the adoption of it, as well as the process for the bond allocations once that happens this summer. So I just wanted to applaud your leadership. Thank you for continuing to support our community and ensuring that we get all of the folks that want to live in Palm Beach County a place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just several things. Hold on. As Jack mentioned, today's presentation is for informational purposes only. You know, I just kind of like believe that we have 3 new members on the Board of County Commissioners, and to have to make a decision on a housing action plan today would not be wise. This would just to provide information and then to have the board get a chance to take a look at it. And I just have several questions for Ms. Baker. In regards to the bonds proceeds allocation plan, do you have a timeline in terms of when you're thinking about bringing that to the Board of County Commissioners?
We have reviewed it. We've got a final draft between staff. We're going to go back to the Housing Leadership Council, share that information, come up with an agreement on it, and I believe that we can come up with an agreement and then schedule it to come back to the board. So I think in the next month or so, max.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baker. I know this past Friday we had a meeting with developers, for-profit developers, nonprofit developers, and then also we had a meeting with the lenders also this past Friday. And we're still working on the ownership piece. And so we've agreed with the nonprofit developers to have the lenders to be in the room to kind of like hash out some of these issues in terms of home ownership. So we're looking forward to that meeting. And I think that once we can hash out the home ownership piece, I think then I think that would allow us to lend the bond allocation proceed. Now, Ms. Baker, another question. we've got the Live Local Act.
Elephant in the room.
Since, we're working on this bond proceeds allocation plan, will you also present to us something in regards to the Live Local Act? So in that way, when we're making decisions regarding the bond proceeds allocation plan, we're working in concert with the Live Local Act.
Yes, sir, I will. Staff has already, between Housing and Economic Development and as well as planning, and I've got both of them in the room, they're going through the process now so that we can come back to the board and tell you exactly what we feel it means with input from our legislative folks as well. There are a number of components to it. There are some very, very good components to it, and there are some other components to it. So we need to make sure that as we're moving forward, we'll work with the Housing Leadership Council, so whatever you adopt, you also know what that impact will be on that particular plan, as well as our bond allocation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Baker. Just finally, just want to thank the Lord's Place for being here, Adopt a Family, AVDA, and also the Economic Council, because this is Palm Beach County and we're working as a team and we're looking forward to addressing this major need in Palm Beach County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Mayor, for recognizing me. I have a couple questions, and the only thing I haven't seen really addressed in the packet has been infrastructure, roads, right? So we're adding workforce housing, affordable housing. I mean, infrastructure has to be part of this process, the package, the plan, something in there to address it so we're just not stuck in gridlock even more. I think we need affordable places for people to live, but if you can't drive anywhere, it becomes a whole nother set of problems that we will have to address. So if we could make infrastructure and roads specifically a part of this process, I would, especially with the Live Local Act, bringing that into this. Let's make sure if we're building, higher densities than we would normally allow, address the needs of that as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Marino, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you waiting too. And Mac, I did like your suggestion that when we have outside presenters, maybe they go first instead of being able to do time certain, but we can work on that. Your package, the actual 30-page package, has a lot of action items in it that I think each of us, I know we all have our individual questions, and I just want to say that in the near future, after I make my more than red lines on this, I would really like to just have you all in my office to talk about it, because we all may have different questions, and that's always the best time to ask together so that everybody gets an answer, but there might be something more specific. So I do just want to say in the future that you will get a call from me, because I'm looking at some of the action items, and I'm looking at some of the wording on here too, and I know we have this goal of 20,000 units in 10 years, which it's a goal. I don't think it's attainable, because I don't think $200 million is, as you said, it's only $10,000 a unit, and that's probably a rental unit, and we're putting aside in this plan 50% of it is rental units, but we also 25% is home ownership, and 25%, I guess, was
could be either
refurbishing of.
No. In other words, the rental could be. It has to be at least 50%, and the home ownership has to be at least 25%.
Okay.
The other 25% could be either home ownership or rental. So everything envisioned with the bond proceeds would be for new construction.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate that clarity. I do hope we can find some partners that can contribute also, because this is not something that we're going to be able to complete with $200 million. So partnerships are welcome. I look forward to hearing about more of them in the future, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Just a couple things. I'd be really interested to get your take, and I know not today, but in a future meeting, at least for me personally, on the Live Local Act and the implications and impact that might have, and how does it change things for us. I really appreciated that suggestion regarding what they're doing in Cincinnati and having a facility to buy homes and then be able to hold them until they can resell them to qualified buyers. That makes a lot of sense. And the other comment I heard was, we had some reporting instances on this, but I think the reporting requirements of an annual report in terms of folks that are benefiting from these funds is probably not enough, as we saw in making sure that most importantly with the rental units, that we get more up-to-date information that we're watching and or somebody's monitoring, and I understand that can be outsourced to there are companies that actually do that, and so that wouldn't take additional staff time. So I hopefully you all can look at that. But I want to thank you for being here. I apologize for the delay as well, and understand your time is all very valuable, so really appreciate you all being here. I appreciate the folks from our nonprofits out in the community, the work you all do, as you have so eloquently told us, these are some of the most vulnerable people in our community, and it's certainly not lost on any of us up here, so we understand that. Administrator Baker, your light is lit.
I just want to publicly thank the board, and especially Commissioner Bernard for leading this. He's been in our meetings with us. I'd also like to thank Jack Weir, Skip, Michelle, my own staff, Dorrit, Jonathan, Sherry, Carlos, and all the others, Sherry Brown, and along with Mark and Kevin from planning, just pulling them in. This has been a passion of mine for a long time. Actually, Commissioner Bernard had a head full of hair when we started on this. And mine was black and long. However, I think this is something that we as a county, we don't have a choice. We've got to do, and our voters voted and actually gave us the means to at least start the foundation. And it is something that we will be coming back to the board with. I'm actually excited about the fact that we can add more, and I do hope one day we can build our single room occupancy unit so that it'll be one person in there, and it helps our very low folks, our people returning to our community, our single individuals that will be able to afford an affordable unit. And so we look forward to working this out and coming back to the board. So again, thank you all for your dedication and hard work to this issue.
Thank you, Administrator Baker. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. On a different topic than this, which is why I waited, because we're wrapping up. I attended a meeting yesterday with Administrator Baker, and I found that we have the #1 agricultural producing county, okay, east of the Mississippi, especially for winter months. And it's such an integral part of food and what we need and what we do that I would love for a workshop, because I've really enjoyed today's workshops and the information on agritourism and how we can really shed a light and help our agricultural community really shine. And I would just love if we could get a workshop on agritourism, please. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
As long as they bring sweet corn. I was over at Peril Farms last week. We really do, and I appreciate that, because your district and my district has a lot of agriculture. People don't realize, we talk about the three-legged stool. First leg is agriculture, second tourism and development. So I appreciate that, but bring the corn. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. I don't see anything else in front of us today, so this meeting is adjourned.